There's a story about a guy out on the street. He's under a street lamp. He's looking for a key. Guy comes by and says, what are you doing? He says, I'm looking for my house key. I lost it. I'll help you. Gets down on his knees. They look for about 20 minutes. He says, are you sure you lost it out here? He said, no, I lost it in my house, but there's more light out here. And so what happens is, we're all outside, looking outside, reading books, going to seminars, talking to gurus. They're going to give us the answer to our life. And there's valuable information there. But the best information comes from inside you. You have to meditate. You have to trust your intuition, whether it's the goosebumps, God bumps coming up on your skin, whether it's the hair on your neck standing up, whether it's a feeling you have, whether it's you hear some words sometimes that say go left, go right, don't do that deal. Some of you get auditory input. Some of you get visions. You know, you'll just be sitting there and like an idea will pop into your head. The name for Chicken Soup for the Soul came through a meditation. That name, Chicken Soup for the Soul, is now a brand that's worth $100 million. We had a book, we were supposed to go to New York, sell the book. Didn't have a title. Had a book, no title. So Mark and I agreed we would meditate every day for a week for 30 minutes to an hour and ask God for a title. So I'm sitting there in meditation. Nothing happens first day, nothing happens second day. Third day, there's a chalkboard that emerges. And on that chalkboard, a hand writes the words chicken soup. And I said to the hand, which I assume was God, what does chicken soup have to do with my book? And he said, when you were a kid, your grandmother gave you chicken soup when you were sick. I said, but this is not a book about sick people. And the voice said, people's spirits are sick. This was 1993, first Gulf War, major recession like we just went through. And so I went, chicken soup for the spirit, chicken soup for the soul. And I got goosebumps. I called up my wife, she got goosebumps. I called Mark, he got goosebumps. I called our agent, he got goosebumps. I went to New York, met with 21 publishers. Nobody got goosebumps. So it took us another year and a half to find a publisher that would publish our book. And that brings up another principle called perseverance. You never, ever, ever give up. Never give up. What if I'd given up after 100 rejections? I never would have sold chicken soup. I wouldn't be here. None of you would have heard of me. So when things are difficult, you just keep on doing it. Keep on saying, will you become, we talked about earlier, become an asshole. Ask. Don't give up. Well, I believe that everyone is born with a life purpose that's unique to them. I believe that if everyone fulfills that purpose, they're like every person like a cell in a body. And if every cell is functioning correctly, then the body's healthy. So some people are like eyeball cells, shoulder cells, stomach cells, brain cells, whatever. And so we have to tap into what is that life purpose for us. And there are a number of ways to do that. I think some people are fortunate, they just naturally do it. They just want to play the violin starting at the age of 5. They grow up to be a concert violinist. But most people, from my experience, are confused. You know, they don't know what they want to do when they grow up. They don't understand who they really are.
What drives Jack Canfield? No one knows. The man is just, he's so curious. He is really an 8-year-old boy in a 72-year-old body. He can't stop. And you know, someone said Jack is not mission driven, and he really, when I heard that, it's really true. He really is just this man who cares about other people. And whether he's on the stage or he's writing a book or we're interacting with a gardener on the property or the President of the United States, he is just the same.
Second, I'd like to present it to you and thank you because you're a part of this, even though you didn't know that, because I followed what you said and raised $1 million for charity.
Amazing, good for you.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
and I hope we get a picture.
Hi, Jack.
Hello, my friend Leo.
One of my goals this year is to have a selfie with Jack Canfield.
Well, today's the day.
I can't think of very many people in our field that are actually in the same category as him.
He said your environment should inspire you instead of expire you. Some of you walk into your house, your kitchen, your bedroom, your bathroom, your office, and you go, ugh. Or your desk becomes something like, ugh. You want something, you walk in and go, wow, I'm ready to go, this is great. Colors are working, everything's up and fresh.
You have Anthony Robbins, who's got his own sort of category. You have Deepak Chopra, but Jack is the foundation of everything that he does is education. And I think it really separates him from the others. And I think it really shows in the work that he does and how he trains and teaches.
But when you clean that up, two things happen. Number one, it's no longer a distraction every time you look at it and wish it were different. And the other thing that happens, when you don't fix those things that are tolerations and irritations, then you stop seeing them. You numb out. And when you numb out your awareness of that, you numb out the awareness of everything else at that level. You know, a lot of people think that if they have a dream, it's too big for them. You know, I can't possibly do that. And my belief is this. Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. I believe that if you think of a dream, you have the capacity to make that dream come true. You wouldn't be allowed spiritually or even psychologically to come up with that dream if you didn't have the capacity. Now, you may have to develop talents you haven't developed yet. You may have to partner with other people. You may have to go get education you don't currently have. You may need to borrow money. You may need to develop parts of yourself that are dormant at the moment. You may have to push through some fears, some doubts, whatever, but you have the capacity. So if it's occurred to you that you'd like to create that or experience that, that means it's possible for you. You just have to now get to work and make it happen. One of the things that's critical is to realize that where you are right now, whether you're happy or not, everything in your life has led you to this moment in time. My youth was challenging. My first father, my biological father, was somewhat violent when he drank, and so my mother divorced him when I was 6 and moved in with my grandmother. And then my mother went to a wedding, and she met a guy who became my stepfather. And he was a very hard worker, but he never really succeeded while I was younger. He did a little bit later after I went to college. But I remember one Thanksgiving, he decided he was going to run a Christmas tree shop. And he rented this parking lot next to this big drive-in. And so he thought it was a great location. He bought all these trees that came in by rail from Oregon. He made Christmas wreaths, he sold poinsettias, he sold Christmas tree bulbs and everything. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, and he tallied up all his money. And I think he made like $3.28. He worked for from Thanksgiving until Christmas. He was devastated. So it was always that pall in our family of like, it's not working, we're not getting there, it's hard, it's difficult. Because of the problems my father had, and he was a worker bee, not from the wealthy class, he resented people with money. He thought it was an unfair system, that they basically were taking advantage of the people in the unions, taking advantage of the workers. And so I grew up thinking rich people were bad. Rich people were something I didn't want to be, because I didn't want to be what my dad presented. I wanted to get out of West Virginia, I knew that. I always say West Virginia is a great place to be from back then, probably a great place to live for a lot of people now. But for me, it was just a place that always seemed like a movie in black and white, and I wanted to get into a movie that was in color. And so there was always that sense that we didn't have and we weren't going to have. And my dad believed I should work hard, but it was work hard and get a good job.
You know how I see Jack when he was growing up, he was a good boy and a good young man, and he just really tried hard to do the very best he could with whatever he was given. He went to military school because he had an aunt whose son died who was named Jack. And because his name was Jack, he got a leg up.
My name was Bob. I might not be sitting in this chair today, but she decided to send Jack, me, his namesake, to the same school in town. It was a private school. My brothers all went to public schools. And so I got a better education. And I remember I was going to apply to college my senior year. And I thought, well, I'll apply to WVU, West Virginia University, I'll apply to Ohio State, maybe University of Pennsylvania.
And one teacher said, no way, you have to go someplace better than that. You have to go to Yale, you have to go to Harvard, you have to go to Stanford, you have to go to something that is much bigger than that.
I thought, are you kidding me? I'm never going to get into those Ivy League schools. She said, you don't understand how smart you are. You're a very gifted child. And I got into Harvard, Yale, and Brown. And so that was a woman who believed in me that got me to go. I ended up choosing to go to Harvard.
When I asked him, how did you finally decide? He said, I picked Harvard because of its location. I got into all three, but I just liked the location. Like, all right, well, whatever it takes.
I remember when I went away to college, my father, after I got the scholarship, I was getting on the bus to go to Massachusetts from West Virginia, and my father gave me a $20 bill. And then he said, if you need a helping hand, look at the end of your own arm, because this is all you're going to get. So I knew from then on I was independent Jack. And I did. One of the most important principles for success is to take 100% responsibility for your life and your results. Now notice I said 100, not 99. Most relationships, it's 50-50. You know, if I'm in a business relationship with you and it goes bad, well, it's your 50%. If I'm in a marriage relationship, it's your 50%, honey, not mine. So 50-50 never works, right? So I'm going to ask you to act as if for the next 67 days, there's now research coming out of the University of London that it takes 67 days to change a habit, 67 days. So literally, you have to act as if for the next 67 days that everything that happens in your life, you either created it, promoted it, or allowed it to happen. You're not a victim. What I know is if you look to see where you're responsible, what happens is you begin to find places where you were, and then you can change them. Because if you created it, you can uncreate it and recreate it.
Jack has inspired me to be a better version of myself. One of my favorite principles that Jack teaches is E plus R equals O, which is events plus response equals outcome. I got tested in a really big way 5 years ago when my 30-year marriage ended. And I was devastated and traumatized and sad and felt hurt and betrayed and all the things that happen when a marriage is ended. But I thought to myself, E plus R equals O. I have the ability to choose how I respond in this circumstance. And you can show up, you know, angry, bitter, but I thought I need to focus on the outcome. I have 3 amazing children. We have a great life, and I didn't want that to get all dragged through the mud. So I made every decision focused on how that was going to affect my family, my children, my ex, myself. It was really a beautiful thing, and I called my ex-husband on Father's Day a few months back, and I thanked him because I said, I'm so grateful that I married you because we have 3 amazingly beautiful children together, and we're now friends. But that was a conscious choice.
It's a whole new sense of empowerment, of taking complete control of your life. So up until then, it's sort of you're a victim or you're part of somebody else's plan. But when you see that, wow, I can respond any way I want to this, it's a whole new world, and it suddenly becomes really liberating. And it is the most life-changing for most people.
You know, it was funny, I never set out to be a teacher. I went to college thinking I was going to be a lawyer. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer. In my senior year, I took a course in psychology, and I thought, oh, I love this. I want to be a psychologist. And my counselor said, you can't get into the graduate school in psychology. You have no undergraduate courses in psychology. He said, but you could go into education. You've majored in history. You could teach history. You can sneak into education through teaching history. I thought, oh, I enjoyed teaching kids. So I went to the University of Chicago, started teaching as part of the practice of being my master's degree, and I absolutely fell in love with it, watching people's eyes light up, watching the kids wake up to who they were, discovering they could learn, that they were somebody, they did make a difference. And by the end of the year, I was totally hooked as a teacher.
I've known Jack for over 30 years. He wants you to win at the greatest potential possible within you. His style as a teacher is interesting. It's slow. I mean, my style is move quickly. His style is slow so that not only his words and his thoughts and his insights sink in, but you have time between the words to reflect deeply on what's being said and how that affects you specifically.
Jack inspires people with his authenticity, with his honesty about his own life, and with his diligence, that he actually says what he does and he does what he says. He has such a diverse audience around the world, But I think who a person is before the world knows them, you know, before they make it big and they become famous, I think that always tells you something about their depth of caring.
After graduate school, I ended up with a job at the Job Corps Center out in Iowa, teaching kids who dropped out of school and now realize they made a mistake. So now they're going to learn job skills and reading and math. And so I was teaching out there, and someone said there's this foundation called the W. Clement Stone Foundation, and they do classes on achievement motivation. So you could learn how to motivate these kids that weren't all that motivated. And so I went to work for the Stone Foundation, running around all of the Midwest, teaching classes for teachers on how to teach success principles, how to teach self-esteem, how to teach values, goal setting, empowerment, communication skills. It's very important to surround yourself with successful people, with mentors, with people who have done what you want to do. Maybe not exactly the same thing, but they're in the same vector, the same direction you want to go. My major mentor in my life growing up in my 20s was a man named W. Clement Stone. He was worth $600 million in the 1960s, which would be a billionaire by today's inflationary standards. And he started out high school graduate, no college degree, with a $10,000 loan. He started an insurance company.
I love every one of you, and it's my sincere prayer that you respond and learn how to help yourself by learning the art of motivation.
And I got to work for him at his foundation. And so when I went to interview on my first day at the job, he said, "Do you watch television?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "How many hours a day?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "That's not an answer, young man, think." So I said, okay. I was in my 20s. And so I went, well, I watch Good Morning America or the Today Show in the morning. I come home, I watch the news. I usually watch an hour show or the late movie on TV, about 3 hours a day. He said, "Then I want you to cut out 1 hour a day of television." I said, "Why?" He said, "First of all, let me define what the television is. It's called the income reduction box." He said, "You're watching other people get rich while you're not."
I think when he took the job at the Stone Foundation, what he got was a whole new world. He really got to see someone who believed in infinite possibility. He was completely different from anything Jack had ever seen. You know, growing up in sort of an alcoholic, abusive family, with parents who sort of played inside the box. It really did change his life forever.
My good friend Jack Canfield, he and I met 25, even 30 years ago at the National Speakers Association, and also attended seminars that he gave. And his first breakthrough in his life was the discovery of the role of self-esteem in personal success. And that was my great discovery as well. And Jack became very polished at talking about self-esteem and self-esteem development. So I loved his work. And I read his books, and I listened to his programs, and he and I have been close friends. I even tell him when I see him, I say, "You know, I love you." And I would do anything for him, because I think he's really a wonderful man and extremely talented.
Well, what got me interested in self-esteem was teaching my inner city kids, because they didn't believe in themselves. They literally didn't think they could be successful. They had never seen people from their neighborhood go and start businesses. Most of them didn't have parents who went to college. You know, they were living on the edge of the ghetto, and so it was very difficult.
And kids that would get expelled would actually sneak back into school to be in his classroom because they loved it so much. And I remember it was probably 1990, and he had come home from a trip, and we were in the office, we were down in LA, and there was a note that had been stuffed into his luggage tag. And it said, "If this is the same John Canfield that taught me, I want you to know you changed my life."
My next mentor was a guy named Jesse Jackson. He was a reverend of a church in Chicago at the time, pushing something called Operation Breadbasket. How do you lift yourself up by your bootstraps? The idea was, the white man's not going to help us, we got to help ourselves. And Jesse was someone that, for me, modeled someone making massive impact. And I'd watch him with 1,000 people in a church move that church from lethargy to enthusiasm to commitment to action. People would leave there and actually do things, start businesses, organize in the community, and go for it.
Jack. Jack is my brother from another mother. I've been calling him that for probably 15 years now. You know, he's this white man, from Chicago, and I'm a black woman from South Central LA, and yet I feel like I can finish his sentences and he can finish mine. And we're the example that the human spirit is so beautifully alike. He's far more sacred to me than he'll ever know.
Jack was so far ahead of his time, going, how can we be intentional about that which is good in us, and encouraging that.
I met a man named Harold Wells. He was transforming education in Detroit. And so we decided we would write a book, 100 Ways to Enhance Self-Concept in the Classroom. And that book went on to sell 400,000 copies, which for an education book is just insane.
That's when I remember thinking, how do you teach people that? But I still have the old raggedy book, 101 Ways to Improve or Take Self-Concept into the Classroom.
So I started getting asked all over the country to do consulting for schools, because they read the book and go, do you do seminars? Yeah, I do. I can't tell you how many years I spent standing in rooms that smelled like sour milk, because it was the lunchroom in an elementary school, sitting on chairs that were way down here. But that's how I cut my teeth. I got really good at what I did, because I did it day after day after day after day. They talk about 10,000 hours to become a master. I put in more than 10,000 hours just doing that. If this $50 bill were available, and it is, I'm going to show you the one secret that separates winners from losers more than anything else, okay? So if this was available, who would want it?
Thank you.
All right, now don't go away yet. Come back. Tell us your name.
Debbie.
What did Debbie do that no one else in the audience did? She got up and she took action. See, too many times we sit around and we wait and we hope and we dream and we affirm and we pray and we meditate and we do all that. And all that's important. It's part of the process. But at a certain point, the opportunity shows up. And if you don't act, you get to sit and not have $50, okay?
It's just so practical. So the thing about Jack that I think is so universal is that the way that he speaks, it just seems to be the truth. So many people that maybe aren't attracted to what people consider to be woo-woo or fluffy sort of personal development really are attracted to Jack, because all of his principles are rooted in scientific fact and research. And so that was the thing for me. I'm a total skeptic.
Jack is the perpetual student. When you're in a group, when you're in a gathering, you see and you feel that Jack is listening and Jack is compiling information for the express purpose of being able to pass that information through to other people.
Does anyone in this room own a red car? See? 2 over there, 1 over there. Everything you need is in your environment if you'll simply ask for it. Courage is having fear and acting anyway. It's not being afraid. There's no courage in that. Some people think the purpose of life is to get from here to death without anything bad happening. That's really bad. They go through life like this. And they get over here and nothing bad happened. They go, made it. That's not what it's about. What it's about is growth, expansion, mastery.
In our world where everyone is so focused on degrees and professionalization and what we call STEM, science, technology, math, etc., I think that sometimes the quality of love behind it all gets overlooked. And I think what Jack brings to his work is a deep love and a sense of compassion, a sense of dignity, and a sense of joy about what he does. I think that is what makes him unique.
I remember smoking pot for the first time, with the first hippies who came back to the East Coast and brought pot and brought this whole idea that we could dream things beyond what we saw, experience things beyond what were in the known world. The whole drug culture burns out after a while. I was never addicted, but it was like, there's got to be a natural high. So I'm eternally grateful to Jack for the package that he is of intelligence and now of humor, and the ability to take the abstract or to make a principle, but to bring it all the way down to an actionable step that engages people, and then to train, people like me were already training and others how to use that to change lives forever.
I met Jack in September of 1989, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was 24 years old, and I started looking through the paper, and I saw this job, and it said, secretary wanted, $25,000 a year. Call me whatever you want for $25,000 a year in 1989. That's not a bad job for someone that's 24 out of school. It didn't say what it was for or anything like that. And I drove down to Pacific Palisades, and I went into this townhouse for this interview with this guy and his wife. And they talked to me about their business and how they were doing self-esteem work. And I didn't understand any of it really. And we met, I was 24, he was 49. If you asked me if I was gonna be working with him when I was 51 and he was 72, I would look at you like you had 3 heads. But it was sort of a match made in heaven. I was really more of a business side, and he really was so driven by making a difference that it was a great team. And for me, it was the first time that someone trusted me enough to let me just be my crazy self. We could do the quote first. I was thinking of an affirmation.
Jack and Patty are such a team, and Patty is it's like one of her foundations she stands on, and that she's always been, and she is a super loyal friend and partner, and she's got his back, she holds it, she's next to him, she's out in front of him. She works really, really hard to support him and make sure that his mission gets out to as many people as it can, because she really sees that his work makes a difference.
What Jack doesn't hear, Patty hears. What Jack forgets to say, Patty will say. There's this wonderful synergy and an amazing level of respect.
Conversation without laughing.
So I get this job with Jack. The same place I had the interview, which was this townhouse in the Palisades, is the place of work. So the kitchen at the time was sort of Jack's office. My desk was 2 filing cabinets on a door, on an old door.
And there was the copy machine and the books, and on the wall, all of the whiteboard and all of the pin-up notes. And she said, this is really going to be something someday if we can just sell enough books.
So I get there, and he says, all right, well, I'm leaving. I'm going on the road, and here's all your stuff. And he just sort of walked out and didn't say, here's your job description, here's what I need you to do.
We have a lot of solo entrepreneurs in our world right now. And I always tell solo entrepreneurs, don't be a solo entrepreneur. Hire an assistant, get somebody to help you, get a partner, give them equity in the company, trade if you have no money, give them, if you're a massage therapist, give them a free massage in order to get your accounting done. But teams are what build success. It's important to find your core genius. It's related to your purpose. Your core genius is this: there's something you do, and you do it so well that you can't even imagine why you would charge people for it, because it's so fun to do it. And this is both the blessing and the curse of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are basically con men and women who have conned society to pay them to do what they love. And the other thing is, don't do the things you don't love to do. You have this thing that brings you the greatest joy, that's telling you that's what you're meant to do. I don't do the accounting, I don't do the strategic planning, I don't do the marketing, I do what I do, which is develop the content, develop courses, teach the courses, do coaching, etc., and then surround myself with everything else.
Yep, we're really good at doing these campaigns, driving people.
Jim Rohn once said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
People can laser what they're looking for.
Exactly.
So one of the things I want you to do for homework is to think about who are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how positive are they? 10 being really positive, 0 being not at all. Anything less than a 5, I would recommend you don't spend time with them. Now some people say, but that's my mom, right? Because W. Clement Stone had me do that exercise. Make a list of all the people you spend time with, put a plus or a minus sign next to their name. Anyone with a minus sign, don't spend time with them. I said, Bill, here's the deal. It's my mom. He said, Christmas and Easter, that's it, right? Because she brings you down. She did. She was an alcoholic. She was negative. She hated men. I happen to be one. Her son, right? But she'd been messed over by several men. So, and she would always be drunk, and it was awful. So the reality is that if you're spending time with people that are negative, that are bringing you down, that are expiring you instead of inspiring you, minimize or cut out the time with them. In my life, the team member that became the most important is a woman named Patty Aubrey. I hired her as my first secretary, and now she's the president of my company. She's really good at keeping relationships going with people. I'm kind of buried in my research and wanting to learn the next thing that I can teach, writing my books and so forth. So you want to find someone that complements your talents and compensates for your weaknesses.
It just became a great relationship and a great partnership. And over time, we started with self-esteem seminars, we started teaching teachers, and then Chicken Soup happened.
Mark Victor Hansen. Mindset, mission, purpose, and passion. Before the phenomenon, he had a vision.
You never know when you meet someone the opportunity that's going to come from that, that's going to create a total revectoring of your life.
What I want to talk to your people about is mission, purpose, and passion.
Mark Victor Hansen was someone that I got involved with because he was a positive person. I met him at a conference. I was asked to speak at a holistic health conference in San Diego, and when I was down there, I spoke in the morning and I had the afternoon free, so now I'm going to go see some other speakers. And Mark Victor Hansen was running a session called How to Triple Your Income and Double Your Time Off in 2 years or less. And I went, I could use that, so I'm going to go see him. And when it was over, I said, you want to go have some late lunch? And he said, sure.
I'd always heard about Jack, but he was an educator and I was a business speaker. And he sat in the front row and said, can we spend time afterwards? And we mentally had a Vulcan mind meld.
So we went and had lunch, and we've been friends ever since.
He came back just sort of starstruck. You know, I talked to Mark Victor Hansen.
And he's the big, bombastic, out there in the world guy. He could sell ice to the Eskimos, that kind of thing.
Mark was the complete opposite of Jack. He was like, he could sell ice to an Eskimo.
They said, you'll never outsell the Bible. So I said, well, wait a second, I'll just do the chicken soup with this whole Bible. We blew through 70,000 a week at Walmart.
He was crazy.
Great partnership.
Right down today, I'm on schedule to sell $1 million policy. One is going to show up probably in the next couple of days. One of your temples go, this is interesting.
He thought huge. Multiple sources of income, and he would say, you got to fake it till you make it, kid, and visualizing is realizing. And he just had all these Bible quotes. And
we had breakfast about a year later, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm writing this book. He said, tell me what it's about. I said, you know all those stories that the speakers tell at the end of their talk to get a standing ovation? He says, yeah. I said, I'm collecting all those really inspirational stories into a book.
He said, I'm doing this little book. I said, every one of those stories that I wrote, I mean, what are you doing?
He said, well, half the stories you tell you stole from me, which wasn't true, but I'd stolen a few. Then he said, I want to do that book with you. The guy that wrote the book MASH, that became a TV show, took him 7 years. He was a high school teacher. He wrote at night. Remember, persevere, a little bit every time. Break it down. Every night he wrote. What happened? Turned down by 18 publishers until Morrow bought the book.
Jack came back to the office one day. I don't know where he had been, but for probably the 50th or 100th time, someone had said, that story you told on stage, do you have it in a book? And so he walks in the office, he's like, oh my God, like, duh, we should be putting these stories in a book.
When we were looking at Chicken Soup for the Soul Story, the key ingredients that we were looking for is somebody who would make you cry, somebody who would touch you to a deep emotional level, that would go make you open up your heart, make you feel compassionate, go, wow, people really are good. So stories about love, stories about overcoming obstacles, stories that make you laugh, that would like go, oh wow, you feel lighter about life. Stories that would inspire you. Wow, if they can do it, I can do it. Stories that when you read them, you'd want to pick up the phone and say, Mom, I got to read you this story. This is incredible.
I said, okay. And so we basically just went out and asked every single speaker we knew what their best story was.
To deepen their own resolve, determination, growth. There was an absolute horrific famine. That you can live what I call a committed life, which is a life that's not governed by your desires.
True stories are better than fictional stories. Fictional stories can be inspiring. We've all seen movies like Rocky, and we walk out there, yeah, if he can do it, I can do it. But I think when it's a real story of real people, then you go, it's not a fantasy. Someone just like me, someone that was a single black mom in Louisiana made it.
Our story, Sparky, which is a senior in high school, never gets above a D-. He's always chosen last for sports. But he has one talent, like everybody in this room, at least one talent. And he took his genius art talent and he sent it to Disney. He was sure he was going to get a job, and they sent him back a rejection. After he cries a bucket of tears, he said, "That's it, I'm doing a cartoon strip to losers." And that's the most read cartoon strip in the world, called Peanuts by Charles Schulz.
I'm remembering a story as I talk right now about a rabbi who, this man burned down his synagogue. And the guy went to see him in jail and forgave him and said, "When you get out of jail, I want you to come live with me." And this neo-Nazi ended up living with this rabbi and taking care of him in his old age. That kind of story makes me smile because it says love is possible.
We want to know each other's stories. I think Jack had the wisdom to know that. And I think a sense of responsibility. It was beyond like, okay, well, how do I compile a book or put together something that'll be successful? I, on an international level, work in many, many parts of the world that are in conflict. And the most important and repetitive comment that is made is either, I don't, but what is how I feel matter, or what does my story matter? But the essence of that is we want to be heard. We want our stories to be heard. We want to know about other people. The more we can understand about other people and find measures of commonality to know that we're not kind of an island, but that our collective story, our collective understanding of our stories will enrich our ability to be together, which is what the world needs now. Jack had that wisdom.
It's great now when people look back like, oh, what a great title, it's so amazing, chicken soup for everything, pets, women, dog lover, golfers, whatever it is. But back then, it was a really hard thing to sell. Most people thought it was a cookbook.
We just started going around sending out the book to people, and eventually we went to the Book Expo America. And the Book Expo America is where all the publishers come and all the bookstore owners come. And we would go booth to booth in the exhibit area where all the publishers were, saying, "Would you publish our book?" We made these little 30-page excerpts from the book, little spiral bound, had a backpack full of them, a trunk of the car full of more if we needed them. No, 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 no. Added up to 144 no's.
I was sort of working on hoping that we were going to pay the rent at the end of the month because we were basically broke. We couldn't afford to buy toner. We just needed to get the book on the shelves and hope that somebody would buy it.
What they do is usually what we went to.
Around 1 o'clock-ish. He and Mark pitched that book to anyone who would listen, particularly the publishers. I thought, man, these guys, they're go-getters. As I was leaving the convention center, I hear this guy yelling, "Peter!" And I turn around and it's Jack, and he says, "I'd really like you to read the manuscript and give it some thought." And this is no BS. I told him at that point in time, I didn't need to read it. I'd be happy to publish it. And he said, no, you have to read it. I said, okie doke. Gave me the manuscript, and I was sitting in the airport waiting, started reading the manuscript, read 5 stories, and this is the truth. Tears coming down my eyes. I'm going, oh my God, what are people gonna think?
Peter had gone to the airport, read 5 stories, was completely bawling at the airport, and knew that this was the best thing since sliced bread. And called Jack and said, "We absolutely want to publish the book."
There you go.
And so finally someone got goosebumps.
It's such a lesson. So often, exactly what we need is right in front of us. And they had plopped down in this little booth with this little tiny publishing company, which went on to become a $1 billion company, and actually took out a full-page ad in the New York Times thanking all the other publishers for turning down Chicken Soup for the Soul.
So it all started here with Health Communications, who was the first publisher that said, okay, we think Chicken Soup for the Soul could actually work, after 144 rejections. Unbelievable. They published The Naked Truth. Well, we finally got a publisher, HCI, down in Florida, to publish the book. We said, what kind of advance are we going to get? He said, we don't do advances. He said, we'll give you 20% of their wholesale price, we'll give you as a royalty, but it's a shared equity kind of situation. We'll print it, you put it in the book, and we're partners. He said, how many copies are you going to print? He said, I don't know, we'll do a first print run of a couple thousand books. A couple thousand, that's not even enough to get out of all the bookstores. There were more bookstores than that back then, you know. I said, how many think we'll sell? He said, well, for lucky 20,000. We said, that's not our dream. He said, what's your dream? He said, our dream's 150,000 by Christmas and $1.5 million in a year and a half. And he laughed out loud. I mean, literally laughed out loud.
Well, they were a pain in the ass. I mean, they were never happy. They always wanted bigger sales, more sales, more sales. They were killing us.
I said, Peter, we're going to do this. We are entrepreneurs, we're visionaries, we're hardworking, we know we can do this. We've sold things before, we're going to do it.
So this is a simulation. This is not true. Just like when we were going to sell $1.5 million in a year and a half, we had it on my mirror, Jack's mirror, my home, Jack's home. What you desire is what you acquire.
I believe the universe tests your commitment. And so you've got to go out there and do the diligence, do the work. But now the law of attraction basically says that you don't have to suffer. The law of attraction basically says that the universe has got a law that is around you all the time. It's invisible, you can't see it, but it's always operating. And the law of attraction basically says everything you think about and feel strongly about, you're going to bring about.
We were in a slump, and I remember Barnes & Noble bought 800 copies. Don't ask me how I remember that. The first week, like we get their weekly sales report, and their first week, 80 copies were sold. And I go, whoa, anytime you sell 10% in a week of what you have in the store, that is a really significant number. And the following week it was 92. And the following week it was, I think it went up to 100. After that I started forgetting the numbers because they just kept going that way.
Yeah, we were busy. We were working late all the time. And I think they had 7-day-a-week shifts. So the presses were always running.
You couldn't pump it out fast enough to put it in a truck and ship it out the door. And I can remember paper trucks pulling into the parking lot daily. We were probably the biggest paper consumer in the Southeast. We had direct contracts with the mills. The place was running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can remember a point in time actually telling the sales department one December, do not take an order for a chicken soup book that has to ship this month. I don't want any more revenue. It was fun.
One of the things that really catapulted our success with chicken soup was something that was, I don't know what you'd call it, synchronicity. My wife likes to call it synchromystical. But when you have a vision and a goal, sometimes you don't know how it's going to play out, but you just have to commit to the goal. So what happens is they print books in folios, like 16 pages. They used to print them like, flat, and then they would bend them, fold them, and then cut them, and that's how you get books. And so in the back of the book, there were a bunch of blank pages because we hadn't written enough words to fill out all the pages in that final folio.
The publisher had called one day and said, hey, there's a blank page in the back of the book. Is there something that you'd like to have there? And Jack, being brilliant, said, well, why don't we just ask people if they have a story?
And so I said, you might have a story about X, Y, and Z, and we'd love to do a sequel. If you'd like to be in that sequel, send in your story and put our address. We started receiving 50 to 100 stories a day.
I would say on average, we would sometimes read 1,000 to 10,000 stories per title. Yeah, we read a lot of stories.
You can see there's little drawer after drawer after drawer of these things. These go back probably 10 years.
And that's what led to a second helping of chicken soup, a third serving, a fourth course, a fifth bowl, a sixth tureen, whatever it was, because we were receiving so many stories. Had we not put that in the back of that book, we probably wouldn't have had 200 plus titles in the series.
So we're walking down our bragging wall, looking at all the ways that we jumped on the New York Times bestseller list as soon as the book would come out, remember?
Well, it didn't go crazy immediately. If you remember,
yeah.
It took 14 months. The book came out in July of 93. It didn't hit a bestseller list until September of 94.
Right.
Washington Post, number 15, climbed up a few. Then it went to the New York Times, 15, climbed up over a period of months, got to number 1, and stayed there for 3 years.
Yeah.
So no one knew. Yeah. And after about 6 months, no one was sure at all. But we did 5 things a day, every day, the rule of 5. And 5 phone calls to reviewers, 5 interviews, whatever. And someone told us, if you go to a tree and you hack away at that tree 5 swipes a day, I don't care how big the tree is, eventually it's going to fall down. So that was a sequoia, but we did it. I'm told that we've sold about 500 million books, about 120 million in America, about 315 million in China, and the rest around the world. I think we're in 47 languages now.
14, so we get closer, we'll put it on the television.
I called it the chicken coop. I mean, it was like, I felt like I was chief chicken in this crazy coop. It was completely weird. And it was really, it was like losing a sense of yourself, because you became this big thing. And then suddenly it wasn't you anymore. And you really had to wonder, is there more to me? And someone said to me very early on in this business, what do you think will happen if chicken soup does well? And I was so young, I said, I don't know, I think it'll be really great. But I asked them back, what do you think will happen? And this very wise woman said to me, I think success and money just makes you more of who you really are.
Well, that was very responsive. Very, very responsive.
There was a period, I think, of serious grieving that wasn't fully acknowledged. It was like the Jack Canfield ship that Patty was on, that the people, it was sort of floating. It had a little, it got a little still, and I do think there was a depression. I don't think Jack was in a direction then. And really, had he not had Patty, I don't think he would have written the Success Principles. He wouldn't have gotten that done.
Well, one of the principles of success that I teach is you got to let go of the good to embrace the great. And so what happens, one of the greatest obstacles to success is success. Meaning you got something working, but to get to the next level, you have to let go of this. And it's hard to let go of something that's producing a lot of money, a lot of fame and fortune, a lot of celebrity status, a lot of speaking requests. I mean, everything was working in terms of the outer world looking at it. But I woke up one morning and it just wasn't doing it for me anymore. It's like you'd give me a story about a one-legged man climbing Mount Everest, which should be really inspiring, and I go, oh, not another story about a one-legged man climbing Mount Everest. When's this going to stop?
And we sat down together and talked about, it was sort of time to take everything we had used to build this billion-dollar brand and share it with the world.
And it took about a year to find the new thing, the Success Principles. Patty Aubrey said, you need to write a book about success, the Success Principles. And at first I didn't think I knew enough. I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. What do I have to say? Is it really that meaningful? It's all been said before. You know, all the doubts and considerations that come up. But she prevailed, and I wrote it. It took about 18 months to write it. It was my whole, everything I'd learned in life about my success and everyone else's.
We joke around here that it's the big white book. It's sort of the Bible of success. It really is the fundamental principles that if you follow them, they work.
Jack's book truly transformed my life after a near-fatal car accident. Jack's book truly transformed my life after a nearly fatal car accident. It was the first book I read while I was relearning to read.
The greatest impact that Jack did to my life is from being a battered wife and how I took 100% responsibility of my life. And that's the very first principle in the book. And I've learned from that being a battered wife, it's not a hindrance to my success.
And every adult, young adult, everyone should know what it is he has to say, because it's just so important. And I wanted to tell him today that, you know, it's his birthday today, and I wanted to tell him that happy birthday, that I'm so glad he was born, because what would the world be like without him here? And all the lives he's touched and transformed and changed. And I raised my hand to say that today, but I didn't get picked on. He didn't call on me, so.
I love what Abraham teaches through Esther Hicks, that called a rampage of appreciation. Now, if I walk around this room and just be grateful for everything that's here, I can say I'm grateful for whoever invented glasses because I get to drink water out of them. I'm grateful to all of you for coming here. I'm grateful for the carpet on the floor so it's not like echoing like you've been in some rooms where like you're in a gymnasium. I'm grateful for someone who created the cameras that are in here that are filming this film. I'm grateful for the person who invented the amplifier and this microphone, and Thomas Edison, who figured out how to create amplification and all of that, and the light bulbs that we have here. I'm grateful for my friend here who I talked to at lunch, who I really enjoyed talking to. I'm grateful for the chairs. Someone made these chairs. You know, if you have a refrigerator with food in it, you are in the top 1/10 of people in the world. Half the world lives on $3 a day. Most of you paid more than that for a cup of coffee this morning. So, you know, but we take it for granted. Law of attraction says you will attract things that will match the vibration that you're currently having. So if you're grateful for all the things you have, then you get to have more things flow into your life to be grateful for.
What drives Jack is very moving. It's a deep soul desire to contribute to you, the individual, and thus to humanity. He really wants you to win. He really wants you to get beyond your fears and your doubts, and get in touch with that great potential that you are as a human being, and have that flourish in the world. And that gives him great, deeper than joy, gives him soul satisfaction to see you blossom.
There are only a few times in your life when you meet someone and say, never again will I feel the way I felt on this very day. The first day that I met Jack, life changed for me. A whole world opened up for me to see. He's like a best friend and a teacher. He's like a little boy sometimes. He'll make you laugh, he'll make you cry, and make you create rhymes. But I know that my life is better each and every day because I had the blessing of Jack Canfield one day.